Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for Resume Anatomy, the do's and don'ts of resume writing, brought to you by the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation, HTDC, and the Entrepreneur Sandbox. My name is Ellen Ng, and I'm the Economic Development Specialist here at HTDC. Before we start, I would like to quickly introduce the organizations behind this effort. HTDC is a state agency attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. Our mandate is to grow the tech economy and workforce here in Hawaii. The Entrepreneur Sandbox is a co-working facility in Kakako owned by HTDC and managed by our partner Box Jelly. If you have not visited the space before, I'd encourage you to do so now that we are open. Some housekeeping before we start off the session today. This webinar will be recorded and will be sent to all who registered. Feel free to send in your questions during the session through the Q&A function. We will address them during the Q&A portion of this webinar. And Kathleen will also be sharing her email address at the end of this session. So feel free to contact her directly for more information and questions. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Kathleen of Kathleen Lee Consulting. A quick introduction before we start her session today. After gaining 2 decades of professional experience in the government affairs, public relations, hospitality, and nonprofit industries, Kathleen Lee founded Kathleen Lee Consulting. She finds joy in helping people align their interests, talents, and passion with careers that are meaningful to them. Along with being a small business owner, she's also a communications professional for one of Hawaii's top PR firms and a video journalist for an internationally broadcasted program. Kathleen, what was the name of your program again?
The Filipino channel, Balitang America. Translated, it means News America, so.
Okay, that's awesome. So Kathleen's so passionate about giving back to the community, and she's the host of Think Tech Hawaii's Connecting Hawaii Business Civic Engagement Show, a member of her local neighborhood board, and a volunteer contributing writer for one of the state's oldest community publications. So thank you again, Kathleen, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge on resume writing. Do you have slides that you want to share with me?
I do. So let me go ahead and share my awesome screen here. Okay, and thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. I know it's a slightly early, it's not too bad, but it's pretty early, so thank you again. Should I go ahead and start, Ellen?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're gonna go over your resume. We titled this Resume Anatomy because anatomy is basically the dissection and analyzation of things. So we'll go from that. Again, my name is Kathleen Lee with Kathleen Lee Consulting, and thank you again to HTDC and the Entrepreneur Sandbox, as well as those who have tuned in today. So because this is recorded, you may be watching this not only in the morning, but in the afternoon or evening. So let's begin. My company is focused on connecting people with their desired careers by offering customized resumes, but along with that, we also do cover letters, professional rebranding, and interview coaching. So anything that has to do with helping you out in the process of getting you to a job or a career that you desire. And that's what my mission is right here. We want to line up what you're good at and what you want to do with something that you want to do for a living. These are the specialty industries or sectors that we focus on, which is government, hospitality, marketing and communications, and nonprofit. And those are actually industries that I whittled down based on my personal background. I've been on both ends of being someone who has been interviewed for particular positions in these sectors, and I've also interviewed individuals and hired them. So this is what I've decided for the company to focus on. So going back to basics, a physical document or a resume is a physical document of your professional and personal experiences. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, but I do want to remind and reemphasize that to people. It's an opportunity for you to highlight your accomplishments and ultimately, and this is why I even got into the industry to begin with, a resume is a representation of your life. So I mentioned this last week, and the overarching theme for resume writing is to keep things simple. And going along with that, I have listed two main things as to why. One, you are up against 200 resumes whenever you submit a job. I've seen the number go from 200 to 250, but the point is that you are up against hundreds of individuals who are vying for the same position as you. And that's why you need to keep things simple, easy to glance at, and of course, outstanding. And I put on here that recruiters and employers spend 10 to 20 seconds. I've seen it as little as 6 seconds and as much as like 20 to 25. I guess it really just depends on the recruiter or the employer. But again, going back to basics, the point is that employers spend very little time going over things, especially if they're scanning through 200 resumes to get to, or to whittle down candidates that they feel are appropriate or eligible for whatever position that they're looking for. So last week, HTDC and Entrepreneur Sandbox had a mini virtual tech job fair in which I shared 3 main tips. And I want to go over them real quick before we delve into more tips in the event that you were not present then, or just as a refresher. Make sure your contact information is easily accessible, highlight your accomplishments and accolades, and keep your college information to your school, degree, and we'll go over why I recommend that. So the first tip that I had shared last week was to make sure your contact information is easily accessible, not just on your resume, but on your cover letter and your references sheet as well. The resume, of course, is the most commonly used out of the 3 documents that I mentioned, but the cover letter sometimes is required. And I do recommend for people to almost format it in the same way that they do their resume and have their contact information on top to make it easier for whoever is looking at your resume to hire you to reach out to you via email or phone. And it's the same with your references sheet. So we went over this last week as well. Adding your nickname is okay, especially if you're going to be working for someone. So if you have a preference as to what you want to be called, add that in there. The email address, keep it simple, easy to remember. And I do recommend your first and your last name. Again, this is the whole purpose is to make sure that your email address is, when someone quickly glances at it, is that it identifies you in a way that is appropriate. And I added this in because I missed it last time. Avoid placing numbers reflecting your birth year. And I recommend that because our point is to make sure that you minimize ageism or any age biases when it comes to your resume or your application. Phone number and address, that's pretty self-explanatory. You don't have to, because everything is mostly electronic these days, you don't necessarily have to put the entirety of your address on your resume. You can just put a city and state, so your employers and recruiters will be able to see where you're coming from. And they'll end up asking you for your address anyway, if or when you get hired, for your paychecks or, other things or correspondence that they need to send to you. So for the most part, you can just stick with the city and state. And if you have a LinkedIn account, add that in there, but type out the whole link. If you're able to submit your resume online, then yes, do a hyperlink, but make sure the whole link is typed out as well. And I say that because as much as we are moving forward as a society and having things online, there are still companies and individuals who prefer printing things out. So if you're able to type out the entirety of your LinkedIn account, that is what I recommend. And also a website, if you have one. And make sure the website is reflective of what you want your employers to know about you. Is it a portfolio of skills that is related to what you're applying for? It shows them that you know your way around building a website, for one. And two, it also gives them an idea of like your skills and your interests. So here again is a quick example of contact information, quick, straight to the point. First name, last name, nickname if you have it, simple email address, phone number, city and state, LinkedIn account, and a website if you have one. So the second tip that we had was for you to highlight your accomplishments and accolades. And a lot of times people struggle with talking about themselves. And so when I help them out with their resumes, I end up drawing out certain recognition that they got from their companies that they had completely forgotten about. And if it is relevant to whatever you're applying for, just drop that in there. You know, internal awards. Were you Employee of the Month for 3 months straight? Did you have any certifications that may be relevant to the position that you're applying for? And certifications, especially ones that your employers have, you know, made you get, are kind of an indication that they, you know, they thought that you were worth it to be invested in. And that's why I add that in there. You know, you are someone of value, and that's why you should put like what it is that you can do, what you're certified in. Promotions, I added this in as well because sometimes people tend to forget that, you know, like what they do. For instance, did you get promoted from, you know, like a particular position within 5 or 6 months? Put that in there. It makes you stand out, and use action words. So I had mentioned this before, that recruiters look for leaders. So I want you to put yourself in the place of a business owner. If you are going to hire someone, would you rather hire someone who can just do the job adequately, or do you want to hire someone who has taken initiative in their previous positions before getting to applying for, you know, the position open in your business to be part of your team? And I put that in there as a reminder. Think about what you have started or innovated or improved during the times that, you know, you held your positions. Focus on your results rather than your company's results, because you remember that you are, if your company is doing really well, keep in mind that you contributed to that. So highlight that in your resume as well. Avoid regurgitating job descriptions. I've gotten this a lot where my clients have given me the job description just to place in the resume. And I tell them that employers and recruiters have already written that. They know what they are looking for. What they want to see is like, how did you stand out? Or what is it that you did that made it so that you led something, or you develop something particular that you can bring to the company. It is, however, okay to use keywords from job descriptions so they can make that connection. And these are the action words that I had shared last week. As you can see, the theme is I am assertive. I led certain things. I advocated, established, implemented. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so sorry, I hope I'm not going too fast. So I'll take a break at some point. But going back to what I was saying with the action verbs, as much as possible, use those verbs to start off your sentences in your resume. So passive would be something like was responsible for. That's just you telling them like what you were given to do, as opposed to spearheaded or, you know, initiated or led. Those are words that let them know that, hey, I started this and I led this, which for you as an employer means that I would be able to do that, you know, if and when you hire me. Present tense is for your current job, advocate, lead, manage. past tense is for your previous jobs to indicate that you're already done with that. I note that on there. And again, a lot of these reminders they seem pretty basic, but I see it a lot, especially in my recent clients, in that people still switch back and forth when it comes to the tenses in their verbs. So the present and the past tense differentiates it so people and your employers or recruiters will know what you're currently doing. Tip number 3 that I had from last week was to keep your college information to your school, degree, and applicable honors. Try to omit the years that you graduated, unless it's something like, oh, in progress, to let them know that you're in school. But for the most part, if you are able to take out the years of graduation, take it out. 1, it saves space, and 2, it helps prevent bias in age or ageism. Omit your GPA unless it's required, or if you're a recent college grad or high school graduate that's looking for a scholarship. I have learned that your GPA, as high as it may be, isn't really what employers are looking for the more you get into your career. So I put that on there. Omit your GPA when it comes to your resume. So I wanted to throw that out there because, again, that was a refresher from last week before we delve into more tips. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. Okay, I think we're good. So I'm gonna keep going. More resume tips, so fun. Tip number 4, keep your resume length at 1 to 2 pages. Let's go down the bullet point here. I do recommend 10 to 15 years, especially if the last 5 years of the 10 to 15 years are still pertinent to the particular position that you are aiming for. Try to make it so that your font is no smaller than 10 font, because that's already pretty small, but it's still readable, especially if you're using fonts like sans serif fonts. I do recommend Calibri and Arial, and that does make a difference because it is used to, what I'm using right now as an example is a sans serif font. I believe I'm using Calibri, and as you can see, it's minimal, it's simple. A serif font is something like Times New Roman, and while that's great, especially for printed materials, it doesn't convey like a sense of modernism to it, and that's what you want to do. You want to portray that you are innovative and modern, I guess. If you have any questions, if you have any more questions about that, we can delve into that further down. Add a summary to the top of your resume. So this is what gives whoever is looking at your resume a quick, brief description or snippet of your experiences. So I recommend this for people with over a decade of experience. If you have that much experience, it means you're able to summarize it because you can name the industries that you've done, the skills that you've been able to highlight or apply. And it's different from an objective, which is recommended for recent college graduates. And I say that because if you're a recent college graduate, your objective is it may be a bit more plain, right? Like, I want an entry-level job or something like that. Whereas if you've had over a decade worth of experience, we already know what you're going for. Your objective is to get that job. And that's why it's better for you to talk about like why it is that employers and recruiters should hire you. Let me see. Okay. So here's an example of a summary. And this is an excerpt from an actual resume. Someone was looking for an accounting position, but their background was, as you can see on there, governmental accounting, real estate, entrepreneurship, security services. So that first part gives you a summary, a quick glance of like the industries that they had experience in. So as a recruiter, you're like, okay, cool. now I know, without going through the rest of the 1 or 2 pages, what this individual has gone through and whether or not they are appropriate or they match up what I'm looking for. The second part is talking about like what they're good at: business strategies, allocating financial resources, managing staff. And the last part, I also put greatly involved in community advocacy for this particular individual, just to show employers that, hey, while this person is very versed in all these technical things, they are also very much out in the community, which gives them an indication that this person is, you know, a well-rounded individual. Okay, so it's okay to use color. So I've gone back and forth in discussions with individuals when it comes to this, but yeah, again, your point is to stand out. So pick a color that easily appears in printed documents, because people still print. Some people still print. I've had interviews where people have had my resume in front of them and myself, and I'm like, well, thank goodness I highlighted it. It looks pretty cool. And what I don't recommend are light colors like yellow or orange, anything that fades out your resume. Okay, so here's my 7th tip, and that is to, if you're transitioning between industries, find common details between your current job and the position that you are looking for. I believe we had this question last week with the mini virtual tech job fair, where someone was like, well, how do you go about in transitioning if you feel like what you're currently doing isn't lined up with what you're going for? So what I say to that is tie in whatever it is that you're doing with what it is that you want to do. At some point, they are going to intersect, and that is likely why you want to jump into that particular industry, even if you think it's like a total 180 from what you're currently doing. Over here, I've set examples of what you can listen to, or pay attention to, I'm sorry. Do both positions, the one that you are currently in and the one that you are gunning for, require you to be detail oriented? Do both positions require managerial or administrative experience? So I have stated before, I talked about an example of a client I had in which they were in the hospitality industry and they wanted to translate their skills and move it over to healthcare. And just to go back, the reason I do have clients like that is because, as I mentioned, my experience is in hospitality, government, marketing and communications, and nonprofit. So the clients that I get are in those particular industries. So this particular individual was in hospitality, but he was very detail oriented. It was very compassionate. And so what I did for that particular resume was tie that in. And because there were certain requirements in the healthcare industry that they currently didn't have, the goal for that particular individual was to get them into the industry. You got to start somewhere. And so we tied in, their administrative duties in hospitality with administrative duties in healthcare. And so that's how that transition was made. Another example was a transition between law enforcement and healthcare. So another client had all this background in law enforcement, but they wanted to go into healthcare or pharmacy. And both industries require great knowledge of particular laws. Like you have to be aware of that in order to be good at what you do. So to go back to what I was saying, there is always a connection. And what I do, and one of my specialties actually, is making that bridge for people. But this is just a prompt for you to start thinking that, even if you think that whatever you're currently doing has nothing to do with what you are aiming for, you would be surprised at the connections you can make. Okay, So this is the last tip that I have, and then we can go into, I think we have plenty more time, so I can add more resume tips, but let me go over this. So be bold enough to talk about your greatest accomplishments. For me personally, my struggle has been to talk about myself. It's different in normal conversation when someone asks you how you're doing or, you know, who you met. But when it comes to your professional experiences, it's very challenging for me. And I know for a lot of people as well to talk about the things that, you know, they were good at, because it almost seems boastful. But I remind people that if you are not going to talk about yourself, who's going to do it for you? So you have to go back to your purpose. Why is it that why am I going for this job? Why am I even going through this resume? What do I want to accomplish? And how do I go about in doing that? The best way to do that is to pull what you have been good at and put that on that document in order for your employers to see that, hey, maybe this individual is the right person for us to hire. And on top of that, you know, like it gives you a chance. You got to give yourself a chance, regardless of whether you think something isn't something you're qualified for. You got to give yourself a chance. And this is why you talk about the things that you are good at, that you excelled at. So have a vision for yourself in mind. This is my personal vision, which drives everything that I do. And I whittled down to 3 words. And this comes to my business, the way I interact with people, even my personal life, is to create, lead, and inspire. And for your vision, like, what is it that you want to do? Because I tend to approach things with a holistic approach, right? The resume is just one thing. I've seen other resume companies state that the resume is the most important document that you'll have to get your job, which I can tell you is not. I don't agree with that. I think it's one part. I think it's very significant, but there are other factors. There's your delivery when it comes to the interview. There's the way you go about and handing out your resumes. There's your networks. There are a lot of things that go into the job application process. But at the end of it, I remind people not to get lost in the noise and go back to why it is that you're applying for a particular position. Like, what do you see for yourself and why are you going through all this trouble? And for me anyway, I have learned that, you know, sharing my own story is one way for me to communicate with people, just to say, hey, I don't exactly know what's going on with you, but this is what I want to do. And based on this is how I want to help you, especially when it comes to my business. This is my wonderful Instagram quote for the day that I want to share with you as a reminder. One key to success is demanding more than adequacy, never settling for good enough, and always doing a little bit more. And if you are looking for a sign, this is it. Because, you know, you're probably on here because you're thinking, what am I going to do? Or how do I improve my resume? But that's just a tactical question. The point is you want to improve your life. So I don't know, maybe today is the day for that. I can help you out with your resume, but you know, you have to kind of go back and ask yourself, what am I doing and where am I going? And this is how, you know, everything tactical falls into place, as long as you come up with a strategy and a mission and a vision for yourself. Okay, we can take questions now, or I can give more tips. So.
Hey, thanks so much, Kat.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't seen any questions coming in through Q&A. So maybe we can do a couple of questions and then you can go back and share more tips and then we can see if there are more questions coming in. I think one of the questions that I had, you know, kind of listening to your presentation was, you know, I've seen all these other fancy resumes where they incorporate design elements, you know, about or from the company that they're applying to. So for example, if they're applying to like Airbnb and then you see like within the design element, either the colors of the company or, you know, elements of like houses and homes in the background and stuff like that. What's your take on that? I mean, do you think it adds to the resume or it's more of a distraction?
I think it depends on the industry. So here's an example. My brother is a really great graphic artist. And like his resume has always had elements of this is what I can do when it comes to design. So it depends on the industry. I have seen like really fancy ones, but I don't recommend putting a headshot. Even if you're a realtor, you can put that on your business cards, but not on your resume. So if you can do a design that's practical, that is reflective of what you want to do, go for it. But if I have also seen like these bars on resumes where they'll put like a rating system when it comes to like organization or being detail oriented. And it's like 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. Don't do that. It actually reminds me of like trading cards, right? You're a person, don't rate yourself 4 out of 5 in something or 3 out of 5. Take that out. Put something else in there that would be of value, because I've seen that graphic and it looks cool. But again, you're not a robot where your skills can be measured in like barcodes. There are metrics that measure what you can do, but when it comes to your resume, take that particular graphic out if you have it, because it's not helping you any. Like, why would you want to show your employers that you're 3 out of 5 when it comes to a particular skill, especially when your goal is to stand out and let them know what you're good at. So.
Okay, yeah, good point. I think this there's a question that came in through chat. How many bullet points do you typically have for each job that you list on your resume?
I do 2 or 3, and that is the challenging part of resume writing, is to whittle down years of experience to 2 to 3 bullet points. But if you are able to identify the main things that you have done, you can easily do it in 2 or 3. I've even done it where it's just one sentence and it just kind of runs along through like semicolons, technical stuff. But I would do 2 or 3, because let me remind people again, you are up against 200 to 250 resumes. If your whole resume is an essay, that's an entirely different thing. It's not a CV where it's more detailed and chronological. A resume is a quick summary of them, and your goal is to stand out and do it in a way that it's like, if someone had 10 seconds, how would you present yourself? So I would recommend 2 or 3 bullet points.
Okay, I hope that answers your question. The next one, how far should I go if I have soft tech experience like system theory, interactive design versus DevOps?
I'm not sure what you mean by how far should you go. Are you talking about number of years of experience, John? Or I can address it that way. If you're talking about a number of years of experience, I don't recommend going further back than 15 years. I highly recommend 10, because we've kind of moved forward, especially if you've had that much experience. Like I've had 20 years of all these combined things, which kind of tells you how old I am. But 10 to 15 years is recommended. Let's see, it's kind of different tech. If you're talking about, are you talking about transitioning from particular tech? Okay,
yeah,
so
that's what I'm saying.
Let me try to understand your question. How far should I go if I have soft tech experience like systems theory, interactive design versus development ops? Okay, and so you're going from like soft tech experience to interactive design, right? Okay, well, going back to what I had mentioned before, put that in there. I may like, if I can help you out, I would love to. So again, my contact information is somewhere in there. Hold on. But Yeah, like we can tie in what you're currently doing now with whatever position it is that you're looking for, but also consider if they need particular certifications or skills. I had mentioned earlier that you can easily tie in, especially soft skills, right? And like managerial experience and all that stuff together. But if there are particular tech positions that require certain things, you may have to consider other positions first before you transition into that particular position. I think that's what you're going, but hopefully, if you want us to talk more about it, you can always reach out to me. But my point is, there is always a way to tie in what you're doing with what you want to do.
Okay, and there's another question from Sarah. She said, you touched on this last week, but when is it appropriate to omit experiences? Is it better to show continuous work history or relevant work experience, especially if you have moved between industries?
Mm-hmm. I recommended to some clients to have a customized resume for particular industries. If you have time to do it for particular jobs, go for it. But I understand that, you know, resumes are time consuming. I usually put, it takes me 4 hours and that's what I do, but it actually takes me about 6 to 8 when it comes to like the back and forth. That includes the editing between me and that particular person and answering questions. But when it comes to omitting experiences, it depends on the experience. So an example of what I have done is line up. So let's say someone is going for one position. I, analyze the resume, take everything that I feel is relevant to that particular position that they are aiming for. And then for the ones that may not, I list it as other relevant experiences. And then I have bullet pointed that where it shows like the job title, but not necessarily like the 3 bullet points that you've done. It was more of it's more of like a summary that, especially if you have something that you've had experience in for 3 years, right? I keep talking about how you can always transition a particular position to whatever you're gunning for. But if you feel like those two have nothing to do with it, but you still spent 3 years of your life in that position, add that in there as a relevant experience or list it. But you don't have to bullet point exactly what it was that you did in that particular position. So I don't recommend, well, as far as omitting experiences go, the main thing that I do want to say is omitting when it comes to the timeline, right? After 10 to 15 years, cut it off. But when it comes to particular experiences, if you're able to keep that in there because you've spent a certain amount of time in that job, keep that in there. I hope that answers that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I have a question, but I want to go back to what John's asking because I think it's very relevant to a lot of people, especially here in Hawaii who are affected by the pandemic, having to transition from one industry to another. He's saying that he doesn't know new software, but principles and experience he has. He was an engineer in AV for a long time ago. And I think what I understand from what he shared earlier, he's going to transition from that into something that's more newer tech in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So, are there any, I don't know if it applies directly to resume writing. It might actually be on, the stage before writing a resume where you sit down and you think about all the transferable skills that you have as you move from one industry to another. Am I right?
Yeah, okay. So I think we're going back to that. And then this is actually a really good question because like Ellen said, a lot of people are going through transitions right now. And it's like, well, what can I do? What can I apply for that's currently available in order for me to, survive and hopefully thrive? So with your experience, if you are able to look for a career or a job that is within your industry, but is able to use what you had, go for it. I don't know what you want to do, but if it requires certain technical skills that you don't have, it really is a matter of you going back and getting those particular skills, right? As much as I am all about making or helping people out with transitioning from A to B, it's also vital for that particular applicant to understand like what they can do or what they need. it's like if you want to be a teacher and you need certain degrees, and if you're unable to do that yet, my recommendation is to do something within the education sector. So then you have a better understanding of what you want to do, and it's closer aligned to what you eventually, or where you eventually want to go. So hopefully that answers your question, John, because I think for me, I still, like, if I were to help you out, and again, I'm more than willing to, I'd want to see like what position it is that you're going for, and like your actual resume, and see how we can tie that in. But what the best that one can do is make it so that just try to get in there in the particular industry that you're gunning for, with whatever positions open that currently fits your skills.
Yeah, I think the whole, kind of concept of transferable skills is really interesting, because we have seen people here in Hawaii, coming out of the hospitality industry with customer service skills, and kind of thinking about that and taking those skill sets and running with it in, for example, the tech industry, whether you're working in customer service for a telecom company, or, customer service in terms of helping, projects that have been launched, and with the follow-up as to how the customer is experiencing the effects or the benefits from that project. So I think it's something that it might be really difficult to think about and show in your resume. So yeah, I think if you guys need help, definitely reach out to Kathleen. I had another question kind of relevant to that, in terms of timeline. Like, how much time, if Kathleen, if you were working with a client, how much time it's a good time for you to basically get a good resume out for them?
That depends on a lot of factors. I have done resumes with a 24, 48-hour turnaround time. But I've also done some where it has taken weeks, and it depends too on the services that they are going for. Some clients I've helped with interview coaching and researching job applications. So the timeline really varies depending on the services that, people would like me to help them with. As far as an actual resume goes, since we kind of want to whittle it down to that particular subject, it takes a while. It depends on like response times. I always give a 3 to 5 day lead time. So, it gives me time, one, to figure out what exactly it is that people are looking for, and how I can make it so that their current resume with their current skills are matched up with that. And on top of that, if they're missing things, like also need to formulate what questions I can ask that particular individual that I can drop into the document. Base price or options, I see that, John. It's actually on my website. So if you go on KathleenLeeConsulting.com, there is a services link, and there's also pricing on there.
So before they come to you, Kathleen, so what would you recommend them be prepared with, other than, of course, the first draft of their resume and the position they're looking for? They're looking at.
Yeah. Keep an open mind when. Oh, thank you, HTDC and Sandbox, for that link. Keep an open mind when it comes to meetings. So I do offer and it's on my website as well, I do offer a 1 hour free consultation. Pre-COVID days, I would sit down over lunch or coffee with individuals, but because of social distancing and mask guidelines, I am available via Zoom, so you can just contact me. But yes, come in with your resume if you have it. And of course, there are a lot of people who come to me because they don't have their resume, which is fine too. But be ready for me to ask you questions when it comes to your previous experiences. And it's you drumming up like your experiences, right? And also explaining particular job gaps that you may have, so I'm able to explain it on your resume. What else can you come in with? Yeah, just come in with an open mind, and keep in mind that I know, going back to what John was saying when it comes to rates, like I have had people come to me after they've gone online and have had the resume done with like kind of like quick type of resume companies that do it for like less than $100. So there's a base right there, less than $100, and it comes back. And I look at the resume and go, okay, all they did was drop in words that were they're kind of like fluffy words. And my goal for you is to not have fluffy words, because employers and recruiters already see that. So again, if you're asking for base price, it's on the website.
It's great. We covered a lot of, kind of best practices in your presentation, right? What are some of the biggest mistakes you see that people make when they come to you with their resumes, or without even knowing that, those mistakes are being made?
Sure. Being too wordy. I that's probably, I'd say that's like 80% of what I get. And it's almost like in a CV format. So I had mentioned this last week, right? CV versus a resume. What we deal with is resumes, which is a quick summary, whereas CVs is the chronological order of everything that you have ever done. And it's not arranged in a way where it's tailored to, what might be appealing to the employer. But being too wordy is definitely not recommended. If you can cut it in like 1 to 2 pages, go for it. I recently did a resume where someone had, was it 20, 30 years of experience? And we cut that down to 1 page because, well, that particular person was in the same industry, but in different positions. But yeah, try not to be too wordy. Yeah, and again, I bring up the contact information because I've seen a lot of resumes where the contact information is either too small or it's a little difficult to like understand. So those are the 2 main things. I mean, there's a bunch more, but those are the ones that I'm going to share for today.
So I think I asked you this question the last time when we were working on my resume some time ago, and I asked you about references, right? I believe like whether we should list them in, with the resume, or just provide them when the company asks for them. What's your take on that?
I recommend this to people before you emit references available upon request as the actual words on your resume, because if an employer wants to talk to you, they will, right? They'll go, when you go through the interview process, at some point, if you make it through like the first few interviews, they're going to ask for your references. So have that ready. When it comes to your references sheet, just make sure you have the person's name, email address, the number of years that you've known them, and how you know them as. It's preferred that it's someone that is a colleague in your professional world as opposed to someone, let's say, your relative, just because you're looking for a job. So okay, let me
see. I think we don't have any, so feel free to send in your questions. We're going to have this run all the way to 10:30 anyway. But I had another question for Kat. And I was just thinking, if you're writing information that seems, proprietary to your previous job, is that kind of like a boo-boo? For example, if it's sales revenue related kind of information, but it's a sales position that you are applying for. How do you balance between proprietary information on one side and kind of, showcasing or, appealing to the recruiters on the other side?
Are you talking about sales positions in general?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a sales position. It could be basically any position that requires you to show some form of, the ability to do the job, but revealing a piece of the proprietary information.
I would do it in a way that I don't know if you're talking about like statistics or numbers now, but you can go about it that way if you know that something is proprietary. And I don't know what that looks like when it comes to that particular question. Are you talking about like not revealing the like
actual sales numbers or budgets and stuff like that, right?
Then you can just write it out in words. Raise thousands of dollars. or if you're unable to reveal it, of course. If you are able to, it'd be nice to say, I was able to increase revenue by 30%. But if you're not able to disclose that, then you can just talk about, just make it very general. Yeah, we can go over that more, but I see what you're saying though, when it comes to proprietary information, because you can trace that back with a company, right? That you used to work for, and then people try to determine that. But yeah, you can just use it in general terms, thousands of dollars, millions of, certain percentages. Okay, so I want to address John here, because you have a very, you're very thoughtful when it comes to, what is available in Hawaii. There are industries such as, HTDC and even like the Chamber of Commerce that post job applications or open jobs currently. And as far as availability goes, we can take advantage of the fact right now that while COVID has wreaked a lot of our plans like all over the place, what it has done when it comes to job searching is it has opened up remote positions. So that may be something that you want to look into.
I think, so John, I would recommend that you reach out to Kathleen directly, because your questions are very specific to your current situation. So if you actually need help with resume writing, Kathleen has offered to assist you. So I would recommend you reaching out to her directly. I think, let's keep this a little bit more general. So if there are other questions from members of the audience, we will be happy to take questions as well. I think another question that we asked in the last session that might not have been raised here was how much of your resume is actually reflected on LinkedIn, or would LinkedIn be kind of a longer repository of kind of your career information compared to your resume?
It almost works in tandem with each other, and you get more creativity when it comes to your LinkedIn account, when it comes to like the bullet points. The challenge with LinkedIn and your resume is that LinkedIn actually, you have to show the dates of when you, I think you may be able to admit it when it comes to your college, but like the dates might be a little bit challenging. But aside from that, they should be in tandem with each other. So your resume should be very similar to what is on your LinkedIn. It's just that your LinkedIn gives you a bit more creativity when it comes to showcasing what you're good at, because you can provide like multiple links, your actual photos, your recommendations. You don't even need to put, references available upon request, because you can have your testimonials on your LinkedIn account. So take advantage of the fact that LinkedIn is very robust when it comes to highlighting your skills.
Great, thank you. So, I think if there are no other questions, you have Kathleen's contact information here up on the screen. So feel free to reach out to her at any time. Kathleen, I want to thank you today for taking time to join us and sharing your expertise in resume writing. I hope it was also a valuable experience for you, kind of understanding where our audience members are at and what they're looking for with regards to services like this. I just also want to remind the people in the audience that we will be having our second virtual job fair on November 17th. And there will be 4 companies joining us: American Savings Bank, Hawaiian Telecom, PAXA, and Serco, with career opportunities, and also to share with you more about their companies. So be sure to join us and share this information with the people who are looking for tech career opportunities as well. The link to the event has been shared in the chat function. Also, another reminder: this session has been recorded, and we will share it with you through email, so keep a lookout in your inboxes. And once again, I want to thank you, Kathleen, for your time today. And another question: would you actually be open to us sharing your slides with the people in the audience?
Absolutely. So I can send that over to you.
Yeah, to me. Okay, and then we will share it with the audience then. Yep. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Have a great day.